Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The point of propaganda is to shape reality, right? The propagandist and the machinery of propaganda exists so that what is actually happening in the world can be ignored or overwritten, so that when you see before your eyes, what you see before your eyes can be waved away as an apparition. The point of journalism in a free society is to see things clearly, right? To reflect reality. And let's be clear, we all bring our biases to stories. We choose which stories to tell and which stories we do not tell. Reality itself is complicated with a million stories out there, just like history itself. And so the line between good faith journalism undertaken in a free society, even with a perspective or an agenda, and bad faith propaganda, that line sometimes can be obscured or faint. But believe me, it is there. What we are seeing in this country is a sustained effort of concerted propaganda to destroy the civic terrain necessary to hold up democracy. Here's what that looks like. In the wake of the January insurrection, when we all watched a marauding mob violently overtake the Capitol, having erected a gallows, shouting, "Hang Mike Pence," assaulting police officers left and right with the express purpose of overturning an election, doing so largely based on a false belief pumped into their heads by propagandists, the election had been stolen. Now, the vast majority of people, I think politicians, people on the Capitol, members of the public, recoiled at what they saw that day, including most members of Congress who denounced it, like House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who said it was the saddest day he ever had serving in Congress, and then turned around along with nearly 150 of his colleagues and voted to overturn the election, to give the mob what they wanted, in hope that it would. But at the very least, there was palpably, I think, some shared sense that what had happened was wrong, that indeed it was intolerable, an intolerable assault on democracy. And then we watched the propagandists go to work, places like Fox News and Newsmax and OAM, to override that stark and obvious reality, to rewrite it. And it does not matter, as scholars of propaganda have pointed out, that there's not much logical coherence to it. We've watched, as people have called the insurrection, simultaneously not a big deal, sort of comical clown show. People dressed up in funny costumes, but also at the same time, it was Antifa, but also at the same time, brave patriots who were met with unjustifiable force by the state. And despite the fact that none of that makes sense, despite the fact that people who stormed the Capitol had to convince their own brethren on social media that they weren't Antifa, like Ryan Nichols, a Marine veteran charged in the attack, who wrote on Facebook, "Hey, listen up. I hear so many reports of Antifa was storming the Capitol building. Know that every single person who believes that narrative have been duped again." Tough break. Despite all that, the point here from the propagandists was never to tell a coherent story. It was to destroy the sense of shared reality that we had. And this is, of course, the tool of propagandists everywhere. It's a tool, I should note quite clearly, the U.S. government has also used, often, quite proudly at times, U.S. propaganda. But today, we got a glimpse of it from the other side. President Joe Biden, of course, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva. Putin is, of course, legendarily a former intelligence officer in the KGB. He runs a regime that's incredibly adept and committed to propaganda that shapes the space of the nation through propaganda. And so, in a sort of predictable and classic move, Putin talked about the January 6th insurrection in terms of oppressed dissidents.
You didn't answer my question, sir. If all of your political opponents are dead, in prison, poisoned, doesn't that send a message that you do not want a fair political fight?
All right, about my opponents being jailed or imprisoned. People went into U.S. Congress with political demands. 400 people are now facing criminal charges. They are facing prison terms of up to 20 or maybe 25 years. They are called homegrown terrorists. One of the participants, a woman, was shot dead on the spot. She was not threatening with, with arms or anything. Why am I bringing this up? Many people are facing the same things as we do.
Say it's all the same. Now, look, that's just Vladimir Putin doing what he does, right? He's attempting to sort of flip American sanctimony about human rights on its head. It's something he does quite adroitly. It's something that Russian leaders have done for years. And sometimes, they land a few punches, right? But it's not like he's the source of the propaganda Americans are getting. That comes from right-wing media, places like Fox News. And for months now, they have been pumping people full of this story, this propaganda that the January 6th rioters were brave patriots, tread upon by the state, punished for dissent, not for a violent assault on the Capitol to overturn an election. And this narrative has now ended up in the final resting place of all conspiracy theories, the false flag theory. Last night, Fox News host Tucker Carlson was selling his audience in his, just asking questions way that the entire thing, the storming the Capitol by a mob of rioters, was a false flag set up by the FBI. This conspiracy theory, the feds are behind the Capitol riot, is based on a report from this fringe right-wing publication Revolver, which we know Donald Trump likes. It's crazy, crazy stuff. It's in the same category as Hugo Chavez's ghost changing votes and Italians using magical satellites to get into voting machines. But again, the purpose here is not for communicating information. It is to break the consensus of reality so that people can be manipulated and radicalized. And it is incredibly dangerous, and it is working. A new poll out today says that more than half of Republican voters think election reviews will change the 2020 outcome. They won't. There's nothing to review. FBI is now warning lawmakers that QAnon followers may become more violent. And a new survey from the Brennan Center says that 1 in 3 U.S. election officials feels unsafe on the job. 1 in 6 reported being threatened because of their work. 1 in 6. The same people, like Kevin McCarthy, whose adrenaline was rushing through their cheeks, right, in the wake of that fight or flight response, with the crowd outside, when they huddled into secret locations away from the mob that was braying for their blood, who could recognize the danger of what they saw in that moment, all those same folks, right, were on the other side of the door, up to and including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, are now running cover for this propaganda.